Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today is an exciting day. We finally got the delivery of the Laguna 3 horsepower sea flux dust collection system. Was just delivered this morning. Here's the specs of the dust collection system that we purchased. It was a pretty heavy box. We needed 3 persons to move it just inside the garage. We ended up taking it apart right before moving it into the garage. Once we took it apart, removed some of those styrofoams, noticed there was a pretty badly dented area. I'll show you a picture here. Here it is. It seemed like it was more so a structural damage rather than any functional issue, so we ended up, once we got in touch with the company, they ended up refunding partial payment rather than returning, just because it was just a structural damage, so I was okay with keeping the unit. First we had to turn the dust collection center upside down so we could add the mobile base to it. The instructions with the dust collection system was a bit complicated and outdated. Ended up following a video on YouTube to help me assemble the base. Just laying out all the bolts and organizing it makes the assembling much easier. Here we're putting all the casters on. Once we assembled the base, we ended up assembling here we're putting a foam taping around this to create a perfect seal. Once the foam tape was placed, then we ended up bolting that part onto the actual unit. As you can see, the drum that houses a 6-inch dust collection port goes first, and then the funnel goes on top of it. And there's a bunch of nuts and bolts that needs to be tightened. We ended up just hand tightening for now, just because we weren't sure if this is the right orientation for the hose. Once the mobile base was placed over it and bolted on, the next part is the challenging one, where we have to kind of put the dust collection system on the ground and then lift it up. This is a pretty challenging part. Once we had it down, it was really hard to lift for even 2 people. But we ended up getting it up. Once it's lifted, it's a pretty much smooth sailing from here. The hardest part for us here was that the orientation of the We had ended up making a mistake. The orientation of the Cyclone and the outlet of the hose was in the wrong direction, so we used some 2x4s to kind of help prop the Cyclone, and then we unbolted it and we just twisted it around. Once we had a couple of the bolts in, then it was easy. Then we just tightened the bolts to hold the Cyclone in place. Once the Cyclone was bolted and secured in place, we ended up using some 2x4s and a hammer to kind of straighten out the previously structural damage that was caused by the delivery. Once we had that straightened out, we bolted on there's a thin plate that goes on top, which we ended up bolting on to create the seal. Here's we're putting the seal all the way around that thin round piece that goes on top to seal it. Here I'm trying to put together the air filtration wand that goes inside the air filter to help clean out the dust. The next portion of the process was pretty challenging. We had to put this little metal strap that goes around the air filter to hold it in place. This was tough to hold the air filter in place and at the same time put the strap tighten. But we ended up getting it on. There are also some bolts that go on top to hold that cleaning system in place, that little wand that we made earlier. Once that was secured in place, now we're putting the lever system for that will hold the garbage can that holds the dust. By the way, Laguna has a very detailed video on how to assemble this, so once the lever system was in place, then we had to assemble the actual drum. There's two parts to the drum. The outer part is the black metal that's a square, and then there's an inner portion that goes inside that's gonna hold the garbage bag in place so it doesn't get suctioned when the dust collection is on. Here I'm just trying to put the top of the drum that's gonna seal the drum. There are 4 bolts that holds the caster in place. Once all the casters are secured and in place, I move on to making the actual drum. There are 4 pieces to this. Um, the screws that come with it are pretty small, so it's really hard to hold the screw in place and at the same time tighten them. I did the top part. I just kind of put 1 or 2 screws on each of the panel to just create the box. And then once I had the box made, then I ended up screwing all the small nuts and bolts in to secure the drum. As you can see here, it has a portion, has a nut in the back that has to be held down, and then use a screwdriver to tighten them. This took an awfully long time to just hold the small nut down from the back and then use a screwdriver to screw it in. Once the drum was made and the bottom of the drum was placed with that had the casters on, the drum was mobile. Ended up adding the handles that came along with it on each side. I also used some silicone to kind of create a seal all the way around the panels, each side of the panel, so there would be all 4 sides were silicone. The silicone tubing comes along with the machine. Initially I used some tape to kind of prevent any excess silicone, but that didn't work out, so I ended up just putting some on and then using my fingers to kind of create the seal. This is a seal drum that comes along with the machine. This helps hold the bag down and keep the bag in place and not get suctioned up in the Cyclone. Next we're gonna assemble the top of the bottom of the Cyclone where the drum attaches it to it. There's a little square panel that comes along with it that just needs to be bolted on. We did end up putting foaming tape around it to create a better seal. This round metal cylinder that comes along with it also has a lot of small nuts and bolts that helps secure it in place. The inner metal drum was placed inside the black drum, and then a sealing tape that comes along with it was placed on the edges of the black drum. This helps create the seal when the drum is secured in place. Once the once that was done, then we ended up moving to the electrical part of the assembly. We ended up mounting the motor onto the mount that was provided. Um, the machine does require a 240 outlet, so that needs to be wired in. Um, Lastly, using the metal strap, we put the small bag in place that goes over the air filter.